Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering, here from the Scholars Legacy Championship held on July 21st. And we're leading out here with a returning threat to the format in Death Shadow. So losing Gataxian Probe and Deathrite Shaman, both cards that were played in the deck. But David using Death Shadow to good effect, top aiding the recent SCG event, and Ponder here is a keeper. Now John is on Goblins, returning to the game post Deathrite ban, feeling that perhaps lackeys will be able to get in there a bit more effectively. And there is a lackey along with a Wasteland, but Lightning Bolt means that early tempo play not going to be as threatening. John going to need to find another enabler, either lackey or perhaps Warren Instigator. We don't know if he runs that. John may have just dusted off his list from the last times that he was playing. Had a lot of success probably 5 years ago or so, top aiding SCG events in the area. And Delver of Secrets coming down. And there is a Goblin Pile Driver, a card that's fallen out of fashion for a lot of Goblin players. Does not work very well as a solo threat. We'll see how this goes. Foil, Rashadan Port. And not sure what that hasty threat is. It might be a Goblin War Chief. Could be a Goblin Chieftain. A 3-mana threat, and Thoughtseize flipping both Delvers. Life total's not adjusted there, but David would be at 5. And he is just scooping it up there. A quick scoop in game number 1. A surprising one. Pro Blue would prove to push through a bunch of damage with only Delvers as blockers. A very surprising scoop there from Dave. Only 6 minutes or so into the round, 7 minutes into the round. Time not likely to be a consideration for these decks, so perhaps he's trying to save some information, though that is a bit of a stretch when you just top aided a highly viewed SCG just the weekend prior. I think a lot of people ears did perk up when they heard about Death Shadow top aiding. And of course, big difference in between the modern and legacy versions of Death Shadow. It's actually not so much the cards that you run in the deck, it's the cards you play against, and that's Swords to Plowshares. The Path to Exile nowhere near as punishing as a Swords. Swords guaranteed to KO all of your Death Shadows, so you can really only deploy one at a time. And even if you have a Death Shadow and a Tarmogoyf out, very possible that they're going to go ahead, or a Gurmag Angler, I believe David's running. They're going to be able to Swords a Gurmag Angler and then push your life total above 13, effectively getting a 2-for-1. So there's some serious risk when you're running up against Swords to Plowshares. That is a card that you are going to want to be countering. And very often that is going to have to be a force of will. Not exactly the most vulnerable card to daze at only 1 mana. But John not really going to be able to leverage that type of play here. He is mono red. So this is, I would imagine, the type of matchups that Death Shadow will be pretty happy about. But this mulling is not going to help. So in order to enable Death Shadow, you can run Street Wraith. You no longer have Gataxian Probe. Both of those cards were staples in the deck. Thoughtseize, along with your mana base, can also put significant downward pressure. So you're actually running fetch lands along with your shock lands, kind of very similar to a modern mana base. You do have traditional revised duels as well. There are plenty of games where you want to go that route, particularly versus a deck like Burn. You can just let them fire off their burn at you, and then they can do the work of lowering your life total, enabling your Death Shadow, turning those on. A couple of Scalding Tarns from David, and then a Mog War Marshal, the first play here from John. A 2-mana Echo, and he's going to let it go, valuing his mana more than just paying that Echo and keeping him alive. And we'll see what he does with his 3 mana here. We've got a Aether Vial, swinging for 1. Oh, that's actually unfortunate. It would have been better to keep that Mog War Marshal around with that extra 2 mana. Of course, he can always die later and make a 1/1. But John was hoping to draw something better off the top. And we've got a Wasteland on that Underground Sea. And Dave's going to go ahead and fetch in response. And he's going to take some damage from these expeditions. Not fearing the 1/1 Goblin start here from John. Going to throw away and we've got a Daze in response to pick up the target of the Wasteland. So a Braid targeting the Aether Vial. And now Death Shadow coming down. War Chief along with these 1/1s. Another Mog War Marshal. This only costing 1 mana and having haste. War Chief, another card that has fallen out of fashion. Typically, we're seeing a lot of the other lords instead. The Goblin War Marshal, the Goblin Chieftain, giving +1/+1 in haste. The +1/+1 being more valuable in a lot of times than just costing 1 less mana, particularly if you're using Aether Vial and Lackeys to get your guys in. Brainstorm on David's side of the board here. At this point, we've got to start asking what type of sweepers does he have? There is some serious work to be done. A Pyroclasm, not outside the realm of possibilities. More likely would be Rough Tumble to not take out your own Delvers. And it's Toxic Deluge. We do have a sweeper. It's paying life. It fits perfectly along with Death Shadow. John able to retain a Goblin on board when that War Marshal died. Now every point of damage he pushes through is growing the Death Shadow. Pile Driver coming down. Another Expedition. Lightning Bolt clearing the way. And a Gurmag Angler coming down as a beefy blocker here. Setting up what I presume is going to be lethal Crackback. And there we go. David picking up Game 2. Now the adjustments necessary. Of course, both Goblins and Death Shadow, far from format staples, a lot of different ways that these decks could be built. Because the nice thing about playing powerful brews in Legacy, it is still possible to field an extremely powerful deck that can hang with the best strategies in the format, but still not be textbook to the point where people can just research your list online and know exactly what you're running. So many options available. You can get general ideas. You know, a card like Toxic Deluge makes a ton of sense in Death Shadow. You are paying life in order to enable the card. It is a tremendous sweeper. And on John's side, we really haven't seen too much in the way of other mana colors. Looks like mono red so far. Goblins is quite capable of splashing to positive effect. You do have access to black. That opens up Warren Weirding, a diabolic edict of sorts that can also make you sacrifice one of your guys to get 2 1/1s. That can be quite solid. Cost 1 less with your War Chief. Or, you know, you're making Goblins their 1/1s, but they're getting bonuses to their base stats with cards like the Goblin, the new Goblin Lord, Goblin Trashmaster. That guy does a ton of work. Hopefully we'll be able to see him in some other matchups if Goblins makes it back on camera. 4 mana, 3/3, I believe. But the crazy stat line is +1/+1 to all your other Goblins, and you can sack a Goblin to destroy an artifact. He, in my view, really changes the strategy of matchups like Death and Taxes, anything using Stoneforge Mystic. All of a sudden, the equipment, which used to be their best bet at beating you, has a very short expiration date with him in the deck. You have Matron to go tutor him, and he's a very castable card with Cavern of Souls, or able to put it in off of Aether Vial, or of course Lackey. So the 4 mana, not the biggest drawback. And Death Shadow here, playing a couple of fetches, passing Goblins again with a very slow start. The first Goblin committed to the board is 3 mana, looks like a War Chief. And we're likely going to see a Lightning Bolt here to clear that guy out. Terrible trade there for Goblins, paying 3 mana versus Death Shadow just paying the 1. That is not the way Goblins typically wants to play. Usually you want to be getting down a myriad of threats early and put some significant pressure. Of course, it is one of the grindier decks in the format as well. It can grind very hard. Cards like Goblin Matron, Siege Gang Commander, I mean, you can really do quite a bit in terms of fighting a battle strictly on the battlefield. But in terms of on the stack and on the hand, you don't have a lot of options. So you're really looking to commit to the board, and that does leave you very vulnerable, as we saw, to cards like Toxic Deluge. You want to be able to pull ahead, but not so far ahead that you can't rebuild if they do have a sweeper. And Kolgan's command, coming down, destroy an artifact, discard a card, and losing Pyrokinesis. Most likely a very weak card in this matchup. We saw Gurmag Angler as a 5/5. We saw Death Shadow as a massive threat. So that Pyrokinesis pretty much has Delver of Secrets written all over it. That is going to be the main target for that, and hopefully multiple Delvers. The other way that would be useful is post-combat damage, but that does walk soundly into counter magic. And deploying a pair of Death Shadow, and this could be over very quickly. We've got a pair of 4/4s. Can he put any more downward pressure on his life total? He does not. Gurmag Angler. And this looks to be lethal on the crackback. Goblins, bereft of Goblins here on board. And Siege Gang does make a bunch of blockers, but that's not going to be enough to keep this around. And Lightning Bolt takes out the Siege Gang. And that is it. Death Shadow taking out Goblins in 3. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.